Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. On the agenda tonight, we have the Edgar Winter group, and this is going to be coming from 1973, and they're going to be playing through Frankenstein, and this is going to be another treat from the old grey whistle test, but let's get these guys up on screen and see how they get on. I'm just going to jump in here because this is such a cool video for so many different reasons. By the way, this is the first time that anyone had ever strapped a keyboard to themselves like a guitar. So Edgar absolutely started that all off, and we all know it from the 80s with the keytar and how that idea then progressed, but it was just Edgar that came up with it in the first place. Like I said, this is a cool video for so many different reasons. Another of which is the way that Edgar is playing that keyboard and the way that he's expressing through the keyboard by applying that vibrato, and he's not doing that by using a pitch shift, which you would usually have, a pitch shifting wheel on the keyboard. He's doing it by playing his initial note, but then toggling with that semitone above, therefore getting that vibrato sound. And it is such a cool technique that he's worked on in order to get it that smooth, but just to get the keyboard to sing like that. There are some great little passages there where Edgar then combines with Rick Derringer on guitar here, and they have some really cool harmonized lines together. Obviously, Rick's got to be absolutely on the ball in order to get that timing spot on, but everyone here is absolutely on the button. And by the way, Ronnie Montrose played on the original recording of Frankenstein, but then Rick came in a little bit later. This is 1973. He would have been on the Shock Treatment album in 1974, so that's Rick playing on that album. Another thing that I love is the way that Edgar just casually walks off and comes back with a saxophone and then absolutely melts your face on the saxophone with so much technique. I mean, there was so much technique on the keyboard. He also plays guitar as well, and we're about to see him also get involved with the timbales. But having such ability on so many different instruments, it's not as if he's picked up the saxophone and is a okay player, but it's obviously not what he prefers. He's just absolutely at the top level on that keyboard, on that saxophone. And of course, Edgar being the brother of Johnny Winter, it almost feels like sometimes there was a mistake made when they were born, because they were just given way too much talent. Maybe some other people in the world missed out because it was all accidentally given to these two brothers. But especially here, of course, I'm half joking because you've got to take your hat off to the amount of work that they've individually put into their craft in order to get the amount of practicing to get up to this level on separate instruments is so impressive. And it's not one of those combinations that seems natural to go from keys then over to saxophone. Sometimes you get a keys player who then plays bass and then might play guitar. Of course, Edgar would be able to do that as well. But then moving over to saxophone, a totally different set of skills are required to get up to this level on saxophone. It's so impressive. And the name of this track, Frankenstein, came about because it was literally cut up and pieced together in the studio, because it came from original audio that just was almost an endless jam of the guys just together, and then they realized that they wanted to use this, and how could we put that into a track? So they literally cut up sections of this jam and stuck them together. And that's how they came up with this track. Of course, then they have to learn this track in its new 3.5-minute format, because they had to make it shorter to release it as a single. On the album, I think it was just under 5 minutes, so it's a slightly longer version. And another thing is that the album, They Only Come Out at Night, wasn't originally going to have this track on there, but then it was a last-minute decision to then put it on, and this track got to #1 in the USA for a week. It sold over 1 million copies. It also got to #1 in Canada as well. And of course, being such a talented multi-instrumentalist, Edgar was in demand for lots of session work. So he did play saxophone for Meatloaf, and he did work with Dan Hartman as well, who's actually playing bass in this video. But the one that sticks out for me is such an iconic saxophone solo, which was from Tina Turner's Simply the Best. Or I say that because that was originally recorded by Bonnie Tyler, which was The Best, I think that was just called. But he did that saxophone solo. And the thing about that solo is I have seen on the internet some people, and even actually a saxophone instructor, who's saying that, today I'm going to take you through the saxophone solo to Tina Turner's Simply the Best. And he says it's one of those classic rock saxophone solos that is absolutely classic work by Clarence Clemons, the great rock saxophonist. And I was thinking when I was watching it, that was Edgar Winter that played that. It wasn't Clarence. So that is just testament to the ability of Edgar on the saxophone, that he can be mistaken for someone who was an absolute legend of playing the saxophone. And that was Edgar playing the solo on Tina Turner's version, Simply the Best. So a little fact there for you. If anybody says that it wasn't Edgar, you can set them right on that. Let's get back into the video. I'm just going to jump in here because I'm not going to have time to watch the whole video, but the link to it will be in the description below. What I love about this video is that with the Edgar Winter group, it's almost like if you don't concentrate on what you're doing on your instrument, somehow Edgar will take it over. If you're not concentrating, you'll look up and he'll be playing your guitar, or he'll be playing the bass, or he'll be playing the keys. And just the way that he walks over to those timbales, which are the drums that he's playing, those are the technical name for them. But we've also got Chuck Ruff here, who's just playing the standard drum kit, but just trading blows with that drum solo. As I said, if you're not concentrating, Edgar will absolutely take over your instrument and probably do a better job than you can do yourself. And also the groove that Chuck is really just so solid throughout this. Chuck Ruff on drums just absolutely lays that foundation, and that's just Chuck. And also Dan, just that bass and drums have to be absolutely solid. But you can tell that this is really just a jam track, and they're just having the time of their lives up on stage. And this is the thing about watching musicians, that you can tell when they're enjoying themselves, and it almost makes you relaxed as a viewer because you can see how much they're enjoying it. Obviously, you get to hear how great the music is that they're producing, but it's just having that relaxed attitude and being so confident in their own ability. Sometimes you can be watching a band who look nervous and aren't particularly that entertaining and not interacting. And let's put this in perspective. This is for a TV show where they just plug in and play. They haven't got a massive crowd to bounce off and get the energy from. So just enjoying it the way that they are makes it so easy to watch. And from now on in the video, Edgar's starting to have a go on the ARP 2600, which is a synthesizer, and it's an extended passage. It's almost like a synthesizer solo. And interestingly, this track Frankenstein is one of the very few tracks to ever have an extended passage on the track by a synthesizer, effectively like a solo section. And this is one of those videos that I could analyze all night because I haven't even got to the end of the video, but there's so much cool stuff in here, and there's so many little facts and trinkets of information that are tied in with this that just make it a super interesting video from so many different angles when you start thinking about what Edgar did, not only in this performance, but all of that session work as well. But just the way that they're all interacting here, it's just a really cool live version of what is essentially a jam track. But great performance here. Thank you so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!